Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Live with Liz. We've had a little bit of time off, but we're back and excited to really be back at work. These past few months have been really intense with people being sick and sad things happening all around us, but I feel like the momentum of the year is picking up, almost kind of Brazilian style, where you kind of wait until after Carnival to start the new year. That's what it feels like this time around. But thank you for joining me today. We're talking about standards in diversity and inclusion for law firms. And we've spoken about DEI on a number of occasions. I've spoken about it on various panels. We see constant programming around DEI right now for law firms. But there are some things that I've started to notice the last couple of years that led to this topic coming up again, which I imagine it will over and over again. That is the practical DEI steps that firms are taking, the programming that's in place, but also the expectation of the client and how that's changing in action. So I don't know how many RFPs you've received over the last couple of years, but it seems like, hey, good morning, Leah. It seems like every RFP that I've seen in the last couple of years has had coverage related to DEI, questions asking what your firm is doing, what you're complying with, what standards you're willing to meet, what pledges you've signed, what programs you participate in. And this is incredibly important right now because we're seeing the transformation in business actually happen on the ground. It's not something that people are merely talking about and hoping for, and that kind of ornamental just declaration and statement isn't enough, where you say, okay, we're committed, but then you don't turn that commitment into action. That's noticed, and that is having an effect on business and may in fact lead to a firm not being selected as outside counsel, lead to a firm being removed from partner programs or approved counsel lists over time. So it's a serious topic that really needs to be the focus of actual action and plans at your firms to make sure that you are living up to the word and walking the talk, so to speak, because it's popular to say, yeah, we love diversity and inclusion, everybody hug, but you still rarely see that turned into action. And then I will say that I'm seeing the firms that are turning it into action reap some rewards. Maybe they're being selected for outside counsel. Maybe they're, given places of prominence to actually address certain topics. And maybe, actually not maybe, they're definitely winning when it comes to recruitment and getting people to join their team, because people want nowadays to be really a part of these more diverse teams of people who are coming together to achieve something, to work on something with different perspectives that they can respect and learn from. And I recently attended a program on diversity and inclusion that was hosted by a UK publishing house. I'm not going to call them out because there was a leader there who gave one of the initial speeches. And I was shocked at the disconnect that still exists between people who are in leadership positions charged with enhancing DEI and bringing these standards about with the members of their communities, and they still have this position of privilege that has blinded them to what reality really is. And it's unfortunate that this struggle is taking so long and is hampered by those disconnections. So let's take a look. What's today? We're talking about these standards. So in January, if you're looking for some resources, the National Law Review published a 2022 outlook on DEI for law firms. I have to say, it still shows this slow growth. It still shows this difficulty to achieve meaningful change when it comes to leadership, partnership numbers, and every element of diversity, whether it be gender or race or sexual orientation, ability for inclusion. All of these things are still very limited and have slow change. But it's not all bad. We do see firms taking some unique steps to enhance the programs that they offer. And we do see firms taking steps to join these communities where these resources exist to actually affect change. So, the American Bar Association is one of the first places I go to learn about what's new related to DEI because they have an entire DEI center where they're constantly publishing resources, they have toolkits available, and they have a community. You can sign a pledge and become part of this. And one of these questions that we're seeing in the RFPs is, have you signed a pledge? Are you a member of organization committed to DEI? So if your firm, this is part of the standards of meeting new standards for DEI, has committed, maybe you've made the step of putting a statement on your website, maybe you've made some changes related to your hiring practices, but if there's still nominal changes and if they're still just barely scratching the surface of understanding, really how to make a difference, and you're still struggling with some of those old arguments about why you can't reach a more diverse and inclusive structure at your firm, the ABA is a great place to start to find out what subtle changes you can make, what investments you can make in affecting the pipeline, in recruitment and retention, and in making the spaces that you offer your professional team more diverse and inclusive overall. So you can actually go, there are pledges, there are toolkits, lots of resources available through the ABA. And that got me to thinking, well, if the American Bar Association is doing this, what are the other bar associations doing? And they're doing a lot. So there are actually some standards and recommendations in place being offered by bar associations all over the United States and even internationally. So I look at the US as a model because it seems like this has been happening for a long time. Oh, I'll digress for a minute. Happening for a long time. You may have heard me. Oh, hey, Rachel, good morning. You may have heard me talk about the Intel rule before. And, we always make the business case for DEI, and we talk about the Intel rule because it was implemented just a couple of years ago where they said, okay, for those law firms that we've been working for, maybe 20 or 30 years, or we've been working with you, you're on our approved counsel list. If you don't meet these new standards that we're implementing, we are no longer going to be able to work with you. We understand that this means relationships are going to end. We understand that this means that we're going to have to start new, and that maybe those who represent us now think that this means that we're going to have subpar service, but it doesn't. And the quality of service is not being brought into question for these law firms that have these longstanding relationships with these companies. But it's more a reflection of meeting the current needs of the company, which says that this diverse perspective is so valuable to us that we have to make a business decision. There's a business case here, and go with the firms that look more like us, that look more like the consumer base, that look more like the world, and that it's not just an elite few at the top who have had this very privileged access to these careers and mentoring that should now be, we recognize, widely spread amongst a diverse group of people. And that kind of corporate commitment to DEI drives home what the law firms need to achieve in order to maintain these relationships and get new ones. As we are seeing with these RFP requests, where they want very detailed information about what exactly you're actually doing for DEI and what your commitment really looks like. What's the makeup of your firm? And if it doesn't have the makeup that meets their standards now, how are you going to change to achieve that mix, the ratios that they're looking for, and the actual status that embraces DEI that they need as part of their business case, as part of what makes them successful. This is really important. So I've noticed a couple of other bar associations jumping on board and offering resources and saying, hey, this is what it looks like on a more local level. Particularly, and I don't know, maybe I just didn't dive through it enough because I imagine many, many bar associations have this, but I'll start with the C's. Colorado's programming stood out to me, and so did Connecticut. Colorado, because they also have a pledge. And so you make these statements, but can you also pledge to commit to a certain level of diversity? And when you sign that pledge, you're really making a commitment and turning it into hopefully action, which these bar associations are willing to help you with to meet that diversity standard that corporations are looking for. One of the programs at a corporation that I didn't talk about a lot was the Microsoft program, because Microsoft has been doing this since before it was cool. Their diversity program started back in 2008, and they had the same, um, or they had I say the same, but like obviously they were one of the first or earlier entrants to be doing this. So Microsoft also had this notion, this requirement that said, you know what, diversity is important. And the people in our law firm partner program, not just the people who make up our internal team, but the external team as well, our outside counsel, should meet certain requirements. And this is what we need that to look like. So the standards that are in place, what we're seeing is something more formal. And what we've talked about before has been kind of, okay, take that first step, make a statement and come out and say we're committed to it. Now we're saying take it beyond that statement, formalize how you're going to meet these standards, and actually take action. And that's what's really important. So aside from these resources related to bar associations where you really understand what is possible, what standards are expected, where they go into maybe some corporate expectations, the other thing that has really stood out for me related to standards has been the pro that some of these law firms are doing. And I will use Harity and Harity as a model, not only because I think it's incredible the programming that they put together, but also because I've seen other firms start to emulate it, which I think is a testament to how successful these programs can be, how important they are, and really, it just shows you that there is a model out there for you to be able to implement programs that are effective helping with diversity. So I imagine they have 2 or 3 different programs or maybe more programs, but and Harity is a law firm in the United States that stood out to me that they do, that is a training or education program specifically for diverse candidates who qualify for certain training based on their background, and they're really putting a focus out there that helps um, women, people of color, and other diverse and other diverse candidates come together to receive training that's highly technical, patent training, and help them with their career. So how do you become a successful patent lawyer? How do you have a patent practice? And they have a lot of different elements to their programs, and I encourage people to check it out because they've really structured it in a way to make a difference in diversity and inclusion, affecting the pipeline of who's coming on board. And it's not limited just to something that's only for the benefit of their firm and their internal team. No, no. This is something that is out there for practitioners outside of their team. So it affects society. And that is something that is moving and inspiring. And it's something that other firms can do as well. So when we're talking about the pipeline, have a program in place. And if you're not participating or structuring an internal program yourself, there are still viable actions that you can take at your firm to make a difference when it comes to what's happening in the future related to DEI. And the reason that this, I think, is also really important right now for us to discuss is because while there was slow change happening, there was still change happening. And that's important, but there has been an effect of the pandemic to slow that change even further as people in disadvantaged positions, people with lower income levels, women in particular, have had to make extraordinary sacrifices during the pandemic that has affected their careers. And we're definitely seeing this in the law firm industry with the pool of candidates available and what it looks like right now in this moment for people who don't have that level of privilege, for people who are, as we said, affected by the pandemic in such a way that like not working or not seeking to advance their education because they have commitments at home. They're taking care of people who are maybe unwell. People are losing loved ones, and that tends to affect women and minorities more than other people. Um, the law firm industry is no exception to that. So, lest we lose this advancement that we've made in DEI in the legal industry, come back, take a look, and it's time to take that next step from making those statements to actually taking action and meeting these standards. So, everyone, that's it for Live with Liz this week. We've got an exciting year planned, as we mentioned before, but if there are any topics you would like us to cover, send us a message, solutions@firmforward.com. We'll post a list of some of the resources we talked about today related to the standards and to these pledges and programs. And everybody, have a great week. Take care.